I'm Joe Kane.
I'm Dan Kane.
I'm Sal Conca.
And this is the Imperfect Podcast.
Don't forget to check us out at hecklerkane.com and everywhere on social media.
To the bumper.
This week's Imperfect Podcast, we are talking to Josh Zeman and Rachel Mills of The Killing Season on A&E. And we're from Long Island, and if you're not familiar, there's been a whole lot of serial killers here on Long Island.
Yeah.
Which is kind of scary.
Honestly, looking at this series and going, oh my God, they're doing this investigative report on the killers and the serial killers on Long Island. This is in our backyard. A lot of these bodies were dumped within, 20 minutes of us.
Yup. You have it claimed as the Gilgo Beach murders.
Yeah.
The killer who is still at large is known as Lisk, the Long Island serial killer. The 8-part documentary is airing on A&E now. Only 3 episodes have aired so far. And Josh Zeman, though, he's been around shooting documentaries for a while. He's known for the film Cropsey, which was a critic's pick by the Wall Street Journal. But riding on that success, he created Killer Legends for NBC Universal, which was an anthology series and was the #1 downloaded documentary and horror film on iTunes back in 2014, and it has become one of the most watched true crime dramas on documentaries on Netflix and Hulu. Rachel Mills, she's also going to be joining us. She began her career in filmmaking on the much lauded Edit Center in New York City. And they'll both be joining us in a few to talk about the influx of serial killers that we don't know are out there and apparently still abound on Long Island. So stick around. Josh, Rachel, thanks for joining us today on the Imperfect Podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Welcome. We know it's late on a Friday night for you guys. You've been running around to meetings all day like chickens without a head and driving from in and out of the city and tracking serial killers down. So we wanted to bring you on. We saw The Killing Season, and we're also from Long Island. So we had some camaraderie there and wanted to kind of really find out more about you guys. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how you've come to make this show, The Killing Season?
Right. So just to clear it up, The Killing Season is on A&E.
Yep.
It's on Fridays. It's on Saturdays, 9 p.m. So basically, I did a documentary previously called Cropsey, which was true crime, also about some serial murders that took place in Staten Island, New York, where I grew up. Originally, I was born in Seacliff over in Glen Cove, but then I moved to Staten Island. And, that was kind of in the kind of horror documentary realm. That was a creepy story about an urban legend came true while growing up in Staten Island. From that, everybody was like, oh, you should do another serial killer doc. And Cropsey was tough. The subject matter was really tough. It took a long time, like 10 years. And so I didn't really want to do anything about serial murder for quite some time. But then this case came around, and it was really interesting. There were so many bodies, and it was about sex workers, which to me kind of just harkened back to Jack the Ripper. But more than anything, Cropsey was an attempt to show people that true life could be a lot more horrific than fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this was an opportunity to show people what a real serial killer case looks like. Yeah, it doesn't get solved in a half an hour. It's not so simple. It's really complicated. It's messy. It's difficult. It's not so sexy. It's tragic. It's more like The Wire than it is anything that you see. And so I started interviewing a woman named Super, who you see on the show, a sex worker, driving her up and down Long Island Expressway, taking her to all these dates. And that was really interesting. Like, to me, I was always thought of Long Island as suburbia. I knew Rifkin and Schulman were 2 serial killers from the 90s who had grown up not too far away from each other in Levittown. But I just didn't know that there was this crazy underbelly. And so I kind of pulled Rach in.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
hi, Rachel. How did you get involved? How do you and Josh know each other? How did you guys get involved making films together?
Yeah, so I guess it was like 3 or 4 years ago when I met Josh. He was telling me about this series called Killer Legends, which is
it's a different one.
different series about the intersection between true crime and urban legends, which people can see on Hulu and Netflix. So we were working on that for about a year. I came on as a researcher and then ended up being on camera and talking to victims' families and doing the research. And on the weekends during production, he would tell me about how he was going out to Long Island and interviewing people like Super, interviewing Bob Colker, who like literally wrote the book on the Long Island serial killer case.
Lost Girls.
Exactly.
Amazing book.
Yeah,
Okay.
great.
So good.
And he's like now a champion of this series, which is really great to have that support. So Josh had been doing that for like, I don't know, 6 months. And then I started seeing footage from it, and then we started filming together and created a sizzle and shopped it around. Thinking that, this is going to be a feature documentary just about the Long Island serial killer case, which it could have been. The whole series actually could have been about the List case.
Yeah, there's so much there.
Yeah, the more and more we went down the rabbit hole, for lack of a better phrase, we discovered that these kinds of crimes, these unsolved crimes against sex workers, it's not just happening in Long Island, it's happening all across the country. There's a slew of carnage going on across the country. And, these women are not to blame the victim, but through circumstance, they are becoming the perfect victim for these serial killers who know to prey upon them. Because they're no longer going after runaways, they're no longer going after sorority girls or hitchhikers. They're going after the victims they know they can get away with, the people who are actually evading law enforcement themselves, which is the population of the industry of sex work.
One of the questions I would have is, how do you think? Obviously, this is not something that's new, right? Serial killers and crime against sex workers is not a new thing, right? But at the same time, how do you feel the internet and sites like Craigslist and Backpage, how have they played into it, especially from the anonymity standpoint, right? I mean, it used to be whorehouses and pimps and now you have this underbelly, right, of independence that now exists, and everybody, they can be anonymous, and the John can be more anonymous, right, because it doesn't have to step in somewhere. So how has that kind of changed the focus? I mean, is this why these guys are getting away with their shit?
Well, yeah.
Well, the first thing I start thinking about is that somehow it feels that being able to put yourself online essentially feels somehow safer, but I think that's a false sense of security. It feels safer because we live in this world of shopping on Amazon and going to Yelp, and there's this verifiable aspect of communicating online. But being a working girl on the street and having a John come up in their car and leaning in and like looking eye to eye, that is actually a great way to filter out people. There's something about looking someone in the eye and feeling, this person doesn't feel right. I'm not getting in the car. I'm going to walk away. But when you are on the internet and the Johns are texting you and you're making a date while being driven around by your driver and saying, okay, exit 63 off the LIE, right? Mm-hmm. You've already kind of secured that date. You're already like walking into the hotel. You're already walking into the Ramada Inn, knocking on the door, and it's done. And you haven't had no verbal communication. Maybe you definitely haven't looked in the eye.
Right. So, the whole thing is just like when you lean in the car, you see like the guy, like mm-hmm. is he like hygiene?
Is there a car seat in the
right.
back?
Shady.
And is there like a baby seat in the back? If there's a
Right.
baby seat in the back, he's a dad. Fine, just hop in, But like, does this guy look like, is the car clean? Like, this is all these things these sex workers kind of like have the mental checklist, right? But when you're on the internet, you don't do that. And it's just like, yo, meet me here. And then when the girl knocks on the door of the hotel, and like the door opens, like she steps through the door closes, and then she gets to look at the guy.
Well, do you think this is a condition of the area that it's in, that you're not in this urban area, you're in a suburban area where you have a lot more distance to go between? You don't have those corners like you do in New York City
or Queens or the Bronx.
You don't even have those corners really anymore. Like it's all being done online. Like, yes, you do still have corners. Like, you go in East New York, you go in a couple places, but like, that's the whole thing. So that was one of the big things for us, is like, wow, the world's oldest profession is changing. Like, that's nuts, you know? And so, but the other thing you have, which is crazy, is you have a lot of girls who wouldn't ever walk the streets. You know, they're like, they don't have the gumption to walk the streets. Go and take a selfie and go to the Holiday Inn up the street, you know? And so, and like,
it's the same with girls that would never be a stripper, but they'll be a webcam model. Right.
Exactly. Right.
Very similar, right?
There's no shame really involved anymore. However, it you know, then you get a lot. You get what's called a bigger victim pool. You know, and these girls, you know, you work on the street. You know, you learn pretty quick how to take care of yourself. You know, but if you're just going to the Holiday Inn, you know. You know, Massapequa, you're not really learning how to take care of yourself, and you don't know how to learn. You know, if you got a John who's like, you know, gonna freak out. So you got a lot of girls who are kind of just jumping in the biz, you know what I'm saying? So that's one. You got a victim pool. And like Coker says, you know, it's like now guys can go like shopping on the internet for the perfect victim. Like, oh, I want petite, I want this, I want that.
Is that part of the algorithm that he ran? Is that...
that's different. So that was Bob Coker, who wrote Lost Girls. And then there's Peter. Who's writing algorithms to see if like girls weren't appearing. But like, it's crazy. And even now, it's like, you know, when we do AMAs or web news, people are like, well, they could track the IP address. And it's like, you don't get it. Like, there's the girls are posting on Backpage, but they're posting their telephone numbers. And you call the telephone number with a burner phone. They have a burner phone. Like, nobody's getting tracked. You know,
right. We're also like going on to these websites from all these hotels as well.
Oh, right. We were actually filming in the Hapog Holiday Inn.
Yep.
In Long Island.
I'm sure the Holiday Inn is thrilled about that, by the way.
Yeah, I got it. But like, well, that's where one of these girls disappeared from.
Yeah.
You know, so like, we wanted to go, and it's like, actually, you see it. It's where Kim, the sister, who was an addict at that point, you know, is like, she's like, oh yeah, like, I could just put my number in and like, I'll get like 50 guys, you know, 20 minutes started calling me. But we went into a Holiday Inn and tried to pull up Backpage from the computer, and the Holiday Inn's IPs, you know, internet system has blocked Craigslist and Backpage and all those places. So it's just interesting.
Well, let me ask you, with your investigations and everything, how do you come across like getting in touch with these victims and the families of the victims?
It's through a lot of hard work. It's through a lot of being honest with these people. It's a lot of trust. It's a lot of continuing to call them, showing them our previous work as well. And, you know, it's the not being a 24-hour news cycle. I think that's a lot of it.
It's a lot of it.
And I think that it's telling them, you know, this is not a fly-by-night thing. You know, we've been working on this for 3 years.
And that's got to be personally draining on you both as well, I'd imagine, as filmmakers.
A lot of these families, they go through the mill, you know, like they go on Geraldo, or I don't even know if Geraldo's fucking around.
Is Geraldo still reporting?
Yeah, he is. I think my parents watch Geraldo or something. I don't know.
All right.
Go on Sally, Jesse, Raphael.
Donahue. They're on Donahue. All of them.
No, but like, seriously, like a lot of these, like, you know, it's like perfect. Like, you can see how, what's her name, Nancy Grace would just pick up all these women and it'd be like, oh my God, you must be so upset. You know, your daughter's a sex worker, you know, and these families like go through the mill, you know, and they just go on all the shows. They're only trying to like find out what happened to their, you know, daughter, sister, whatever. They're fairly dysfunctional, you know, whatever. Like the whole thing's a shit show. And you know, these families are just, they go through the mill, and the TV pundits, they just eat them up and spit them out. Yeah. And they think they're going to get some kind of like closure from it. and they don't. It's just like, oh, that was unsatisfying. Like, I didn't get anything. So we got to go in. We got to be like, okay, we're not this. All right, we really do want to help. And they're like, I don't know. Like, that's what the last producer said. We're like, we're not just the producers. We're also the director. We're also on camera. Here's our you got to handhold them through the whole thing, And they're like, and you can understand why.
What do you think about the internet playing a part in it in terms of Craigslist and Backpage? I mean, do you think the government should interject and shut these sites down?
So if you guys know, about a month ago, the guy who runs Backpage was arrested for, I believe it was child trafficking, right? Out of California, but
he wasn't really trafficking. It's because the site.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
The thing is that sure, these sites are complicit, and Craigslist, Backpage, but if they're taken down, someone else is just going to pop up.
Right.
That's the thing.
Well, they need to be properly regulated. The question is like how much they need to be regulated, right? But if it's over-regulated, it becomes too difficult, then people are just going to move to a different site. I mean, you have a lot of like chemically dependent, aka heroin addicts, who are trying to post up on Craigslist. If it becomes too difficult, they're going to go to some place that's just going to make it easier.
Yep.
Need regulation. It can't be too regulated. But like a lot of the girls that we've spoken to were like, yeah, I don't need a pimp.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. At the same time, other girls we've spoken to, they just, again, they like, and it's good for those women who like need to make a buck to pay their rent, because they can jump in and out. But it's bad for like, we were in Virginia, right? And this whole town in West Virginia, is on opiate addiction. This whole town, the whole town's like a zombie town, in West Virginia.
Well, Staten Island is that now too,
right? So what are these people doing? They want to get high. They're like, hey, I'm going to sell myself, and so, and that's not a judgment call. I'm just saying, like, that's what they do.
It's reality.
So, like, the first thing they do is, like, I'm not going to walk down on the street. I'm going to go on Craigslist. So it becomes an easy facilitator if, like, you really want to get money quick. So what do you do about that? It's so difficult, so hard.
Yeah. Well, and that was an interesting thing. You drove Super around. Was that for one night? I mean, how many calls did she have in a night? I mean, I thought that was crazy that you guys drove her around to begin with, and then she, then her phone didn't charge and you couldn't get in touch with her. It was like, all that stuff. But I mean, how many calls did she get in a night?
Yeah, that's the thing, is that I think a lot of these women have these ideas of how they will conduct their business.
Right.
But then, as we probably all would, something goes, someone wants to take a little bit longer, and you're not going to text your friend in the middle because you're supposed to tell them if you're okay in 30 minutes or not.
Yeah, it's like, they're like, oh no, we have rules.
Yeah.
And then it's like, yeah, smoke a joint, and then you forgot about the rules. So, it's like, so, but like they need these rules. I mean, that was one of the things. That was like, it was just so interesting. It was like, back in the day, it was like the pimp and the girl and the John, and now it's like all like, you get a car, you got a driver, he's not really a pimp, but he's kind of a pimp. Mm-hmm. The girls control their own money, but like, what if you're like a girl like operating where there's an active serial killer? Like every door you're gonna open at is gonna be the guy, could be the guy. It's just crazy.
Well, like we said, we're from Long Island. We grew up on Long Island, all three of us, and we just it's opened my eyes looking at this series, going, wow, like this is in our backyard. Like we didn't, I had heard about the Go-Go Beach killings, and it's here. I
think it's naivete, right? I mean, I think a lot of people want to close a blind eye to it because they don't want to know. They don't want to know what's going on in the backyard. I mean, this is not what News 12 is broadcasting. In the day, they're not talking about this stuff.
No.
Plus we don't have as much as we pay in taxes, right? We live in Nassau County, the highest taxes in the entire country, but we do not have the amount of people we need to support and bring these people to justice and do the correct job of policing and all that type of stuff. Just like I think you guys had the guy from the FBI on, the profiler, right? 8 profilers for the entire U.S. Like, there's just not enough people. It's like we watch Criminal Minds, right? And it's like there's 8 profilers on a plane that are flying all around. You think there's like teams of these people everywhere, right? It's like, no, that's it.
I mean, we're fed this like bullshit line that like law enforcement is feeding our information into supercomputers 24/7, and it's like, bro, they don't even know how to use a fucking computer.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, and so like, sure, the NSA may be dumping huge amounts of our information for future reference for like if you're a terrorist, but God forbid, like, you go commit a crime in Nassau County or Suffolk County or Staten Island or something. Like, those guys, trust me, they're not, logging in and checking. They barely can understand, like Excel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, literally, it's
And
that.
But that starts at the top. It's, I mean, the police officers that give their lives every day, for our safety and things like that. We have a lot of friends that are police officers, that type of thing. This is at the top, the top level where they're not getting the support with the money and using it correctly to give these guys the education and tools.
Look, I don't want to throw law enforcement underneath the bus either.
Yeah.
This is a little bit more of, it's more of an indictment of the media. It's like I could go on any show right now, pull it up, and you'll see like that computer room where like some guy's on a mic set, is like enlarged 50%, zoom in there and all that stuff, and and so it creates this false narrative that then you re-believe. Law enforcement, they're underpaid. Well, maybe not Nassau, Suffolk County. Suffolk County is second highest in the country, but definitely overworked, but at the same time, like it's just they're just trying to stem the flow. They're also just trying to solve cases. Look, by the way, our solve rates have gone down 30% across the country, recently, in the past like 30 years. Crime is lowering, but our solve rates have gone down too.
Yep.
We have stranger to stranger crime. You're not going in the house and there's the wife dead on the floor and the husband holding the knife. You know what I'm saying? There's no crimes of passion aren't happening like that.
And you think about all the Jane Does involved in this case, we can't even identify.
That's really messed up. And look,
right?
And look, I get it. Again, I get it. I understand it's difficult. But if you're saying that you are doing everything and, to like, think of how much money taxpayers are wasting on this case or have wasted on this case. Meanwhile, 2 people,
Mm-hmm.
2 regular schmoes, we're sitting here like going through
Speak for yourself.
Okay, we're going through the database and we're like, wait a second, why didn't they do this? Why isn't this information here? They didn't match this up. Wait, why is JNO number 6 not in the database?
Yeah.
Oh, wait a second. JNO number 6 has a tattoo that nobody knows about. How come the public doesn't know about? You know what I'm saying? And it's like, okay, somebody here is not like thoroughly investigating. And then the problem is that you have all these wacky, crazy conspiracy theories who are like, because they're not investigating, it's like, oh, police chief's the serial killer. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Conspiracy,
Josh, thanks so much for your time, man. I mean, this was awesome. I wish you guys a lot of success with the show. I think it's something that people need to see, obviously, and hopefully, we'll be able to open up people's eyes here on Long Island and throughout the country.
Absolutely. Now, here's the thing. Like, Long Island, like, this case can be solved. Chances are these. If you are interested, go to Web Sleuths. Go to all the sites. Look at the missing and unidentified on Long Island. Take a look at these pictures. Somehow, these women and this one guy are from the Long Island fringe area, East New York, Queens. Like, they're from around there. So, again, this case can be solved. And if you want to kind of join in the investigation, go on Web Sleuths, register. And you could definitely find out more information. It's cool. It's interesting to kind of go in and be part of that investigation, and that's what the show attempts to do.
Awesome. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Rachel, for your time today.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch.